All right. I want to talk about these nasal sprays because, the research that I'm reading seems exciting, especially because everything we've learned about COVID, being airborne, you would think that having something, go into your nose would be a great, spot to have that. And now we're taking a look at three different nasal sprays in advanced trials that could really trigger some strong immunity.
Yeah, this is really interesting. A body's normal response to protecting against viruses or bacteria for that matter actually begins in the nose, right? So there are what are called mucosal epithelial cells, which, in addition to creating a barrier, a physical barrier preventing viruses from entering your system, it's actually the first time that your body gets exposed to viruses like COVID and really initiates your immune response. So these the intranasal administration of vaccines, which has been something that's been thought about for quite some time and has some promising test results in early phases, is a really new and innovative way to deliver the vaccines. What we know from the early clinical trials that in addition to eliciting this nasal mucosal response, the nasal vaccines do also seem to promote the normal immune sort of systemic response, whereas the reverse doesn't seem to be true, that the vaccines you traditionally get in your arm or your leg if you're a child produce a robust systemic response, but don't get the added benefit of the mucosal epithelial response.
So, do you think that this is something we could see in the future if we do have to have, some type of a yearly inoculation?
Sure. And this is not the first time that intranasal vaccines have been introduced around the world. There are other mechanisms that we deliver vaccines. There is against the rotavirus, the vaccine that young children receive is an oral vaccine. So there are different mechanisms by which you can elicit the immune response through vaccination. It's also probably something you can do that's more easily tolerated, especially for those who might have a needle phobia.
All right, let's talk about interferon because some people might know that name, but for other, treatments. But now there's this potential use for severe COVID.
This is an interesting, although somewhat small and limited study out of South America, out of Brazil, I believe, that looked at the administration of interferon, which is an immune modulator. We should be clear; its more typical uses are in disease processes such as cancer, hepatitis C, multiple sclerosis. But when used there, it's used in very high and somewhat frequent doses. In this study, they use a relatively low dose, a single dose of interferon. And again, interferon is a family of medications. This was one particular subset. And it did seem to show some significant protection against hospitalization and new infection. Now, we should be clear that this study is not yet peer-reviewed, and that smaller studies conducted here in the US, one out of Boston, I believe, have yet to reproduce similar results. So exciting, interesting, and again, anything we can do to add to the armamentarium in the fight against COVID, I think is worthwhile pursuing. But I think we're going to wait for some more data.